Raiders fans, something feels different in the air right now, and not in a good way. This stretch of football has become one of the most confusing and frustrating experiences the fan base has faced since the team arrived in Las Vegas. Every week ends with the same feeling of being stuck in a cycle with no exit, and every decision coming from the sideline only makes it clearer that the current leadership seems to have lost its sense of direction. When you look inside that locker room, at the way the team takes the field, at the way they finish games, nothing gives the impression that there's a real plan guiding any of it. It's like watching someone drive without knowing the destination, without a map, without direction, and without the slightest sign that they're getting closer to a better path. What's most striking is how each game reinforces the feeling that the team has turned into an even more disorganized version of eras that fans once believed were rock bottom. Things have gotten so messy that comparisons with previous regimes are starting to gain traction, and that alone says a lot about the current moment. When a team reaches a point where it looks disconnected, lacking identity, and showing no real growth, it becomes impossible to ignore that the problem sits at the top. It's not about the players' effort. It's not about a lack of desire from the roster. This is about the absence of direction, the lack of leadership capable of turning mistakes into learning experiences instead of repeated patterns. This season has turned into a showcase of everything that can go wrong when a team fails to align itself offensively, defensively, and in the fundamentals that any competitive squad should be built upon. Each game feels like a sequence of the same stumbles, the same questionable choices, and the same stubborn insistence on approaches that clearly don't work. It's nearly impossible to watch this offense take the field and not feel like every snap is some sort of improvisation, as if each play is created on the spot with no logic, no adaptation, and no attempt to maximize the talent this roster actually has. The unit remains trapped in a predictable mindset, lacking creativity, lacking rhythm, and showing no adjustments that could offer even a flicker of hope. And when you look at the defense, the picture doesn't become any more encouraging. The same holes appear week after week. The same coverage mistakes happen without being corrected, and opposing teams exploit all of it like they're running practice drills. The lack of evolution is so evident that even the most optimistic fans are beginning to question what is really happening behind the scenes during weekly preparation. It's hard to believe that all of this is just bad luck or mere coincidence. There are decisions being made that simply don't align with what today's game demands. Perhaps the most concerning aspect of all is the clear inability to develop young players. This should be a vital part of any real rebuilding process, yet it feels completely forgotten by the current regime. Every week brings a new story that makes no sense, an inexplicable inactive player, a position change that contradicts everything previously stated, or a preference for veterans who aren't producing. When a struggling team avoids using its rookies, it sends a loud message of internal confusion. How can a roster trust a process when that process changes direction every week? This type of inconsistency drains the morale of any team. You can see it in the players' body language, in their post-game interviews, in the way they come out of halftime, and in how they look like they're trying without believing in the plan they're supposed to follow. A coach needs to inspire confidence, build a culture, and give the roster a reason to believe. And right now, none of that seems to be happening. On the contrary, it feels like the entire structure is trapped in a repetitive routine where the same problems are ignored and the same empty answers are given after every loss. The offense can't find rhythm because everything is predictable. The quarterback looks boxed into decisions that make no sense in the context of the game, and that happens because the game plan offers no real options. When a team spends so much time trying to force something that clearly doesn't work, it wastes opportunities and loses any sense of identity. It's hard to demand consistency from players who don't receive consistency during preparation. Each drive feels like an experiment. Each possession feels disconnected from the last, and nothing has continuity. The decisions don't feel rooted in football logic, but rather in personal preferences and behind-the-scenes stubbornness. On the defensive side, the frustration is even more painful because that unit should be the most stable part of the team. Yet the same mistakes happen, with players placed in roles that don't suit their strengths, and decisions that ignore what each individual does best. It's as if the entire system were assembled backward. Players with clear physical and technical strengths are pushed into responsibilities that don't match their skill set, while more suitable options sit and used without convincing explanations. Fans are exhausted from watching wide-open receivers, uncontested running lanes, and a secondary that always seems a step behind. The sum of all this creates an environment that drains hope. When a team's leadership begins to look disconnected from reality, the fans feel it. When decisions are justified with excuses that don't match what actually happens on the field, the fans feel it. And when leadership refuses to admit mistakes or change what clearly doesn't work, that's when the fan base realizes the crisis runs deeper than just losing games. The worst part is that even in moments where the team could test new formations, new combinations, new players, or new ideas, nothing changes. Everything stays the same. The same decisions, the same errors, the same explanations. And that creates an empty feeling in the hearts of the fans, because there's no sense of direction. There's no spark, no sign that something meaningful is being built. It feels like watching an entire season being wasted without any effort to correct the path. Things have reached a point where even the most patient supporters are beginning to admit that change must happen. A team can lose games. A team can go through transitions. A team can make mistakes. But what it cannot do is remain attached to a philosophy that doesn't help anyone evolve. Without direction, without coherent decision-making, and without the courage to make the necessary changes, the team continues sinking. And with each passing week, it becomes clearer that something has to change, because continuing like this is simply unsustainable. As the weeks go by, the pressure surrounding this team grows heavier, not just because of the losses, but because of the clear lack of direction. When a franchise reaches a moment like this, where every game feels like a repeat of the last, the conversation naturally shifts toward accountability. Fans aren't asking for miracles or overnight transformations. They're asking for signs of intention, for decisions that show awareness of what's going wrong and a willingness to fix it. But instead of that, the narrative around the Raiders has been dominated by confusion, mixed messages, and a stubbornness that makes everything feel even more chaotic. What hurts most is the realization that the team has pieces of real talent, and yet those pieces rarely fit together in a way that produces results. Drives stall for reasons that make no sense. Defensive stands collapse after holding strong for long stretches. Momentum swings disappear in seconds because the team doesn't know how to capitalize on key moments. It's not about lacking ability, it's about lacking structure. And when structure is missing, every player, no matter how skilled, ends up looking lost. There's a growing disconnect between what fans see on the field and what the leadership insists is happening behind the scenes. Every press conference feels like déjà vu, filled with the same phrases about effort, preparation, and small corrections that never show up on game day. It's difficult to trust words when the reality on the field contradicts them week after week. Eventually, fans stop hearing explanations and start focusing on patterns. And the pattern right now is a team that enters games unprepared, adjusts too slowly, and shows no progression in areas that desperately need improvement. It's as if each game plan is built in isolation, without learning from mistakes of the previous week. Players feel this instability too. You can see it in the way they hesitate during key moments, how they seem unsure of their assignments, how communication breaks down when it matters most. Football is a sport that thrives on clarity, on trust, on everyone understanding their role within the larger plan. When that clarity disappears, the entire operation collapses. Even veterans who've been through tough seasons before appear uncertain, and young players, who should be gaining confidence and experience, instead seem stuck in neutral or, worse, moving backward. This is not what growth looks like. This is what erosion looks like. And the fans, who have endured years of highs and lows, can sense the difference between a rebuilding process and a downward spiral. A rebuilding team shows flashes of what could be. It shows progress even in losses. It builds excitement for the future even when the present is difficult. But what the Raiders are showing right now is the opposite. Instead of growth, there's stagnation. Instead of creativity, there's predictability. Instead of bold decisions, there's hesitation. And instead of a clear plan, there's an ongoing feeling that the team is simply reacting to problems rather than solving them. The most concerning part is that the division around the team seems to be widening. Fans want answers. Players want stability. Analysts want clarity. But leadership seems intent on staying committed to a philosophy that isn't producing results. When the head of a team refuses to adapt, everything beneath it eventually collapses. Winning in the NFL requires flexibility, innovation, and a clear sense of timing. It requires understanding when something isn't working and having the courage to pivot. The Raiders aren't doing any of that right now. Instead, they're locked into a mindset that continues to produce frustration every Sunday. As the season continues, the conversation becomes less about individual games and more about the identity of the franchise moving forward. What kind of team is this supposed to be? What values are supposed to guide this roster? What blueprint is the organization trying to build around? Right now, none of those questions have answers. And as long as they remain unanswered, progress is impossible. You cannot build a future without understanding the present. You cannot expect players to buy into something that doesn't have a clear purpose. You cannot ask for patience when there's no sign that anything is being built. The locker room atmosphere reflects this uncertainty. When a team truly believes in its direction, you can see it in the energy, in the unity, in the way players lift each other up even in difficult times. But when doubt creeps in, when players begin to question the process, when the same issues go unaddressed, that unity begins to crack. No team can succeed when the foundation is unstable. And right now, the foundation feels shakier than it has in years. The toughest part is imagining what this team could be if it simply embraced its strengths and adjusted its weaknesses with honesty. There are players with enough talent to shift the direction of a game, but those players need guidance, structure, and a system designed to maximize their abilities. Talent cannot thrive in confusion. Leadership cannot thrive in denial. And hope cannot thrive when fans feel ignored. Eventually, organizational pride must give way to accountability. The coaching staff must acknowledge that what they're doing isn't working. The front office must recognize that the current approach is not sustainable. And the entire franchise must decide whether it wants to continue down this path or take the necessary steps to rise out of this cycle. Change doesn't always mean firing everyone. Sometimes change means adjusting philosophies, admitting mistakes, simplifying playbooks, empowering players, or trusting youth. But whatever form that change takes, it needs to happen sooner rather than later. Because right now, the Raiders are drifting, not sinking instantly, but drifting slowly into deeper water, carried by currents they refuse to acknowledge. And if something doesn't shift soon, the team risks wasting not only this season, but the foundation of seasons ahead. Raiders fans are loyal, passionate, and patient, but patience has a limit when the problems are as visible as they become. At some point, effort without direction becomes noise. Potential without guidance becomes frustration. And loyalty without progress becomes heartbreak. The Raiders can still change their trajectory, but only if they finally admit that the path they're on is leading nowhere. Until that happens, the frustration will keep building, the questions will keep growing, and the disconnect between the team and its fan base will only get harder to repair. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on our Las Vegas Raiders. And don't be shy. Drop your thoughts on the news in the comments below. A hush of disbelief rippled through the league after the Cowboys. Raiders clash was abruptly declared null, a decision that has already become the centerpiece of locker room whispers and late-night talk shows. What was supposed to be a marquee matchup dissolved into a swirl of confusion, with players, coaches, and fans left piecing together fragments of what truly unfolded on the field. The most persistent murmurs suggest that the officiating crew was overwhelmed by a sequence of incidents that spiraled far beyond the usual bounds of game day controversy. Eyewitnesses near the sidelines claim that tensions between the teams had been simmering long before the opening snap, with jawing, shoving, and pointed gestures fueling a combustible atmosphere. But the real storm, according to those who swear they saw it, erupted after a disputed sequence that triggered heated confrontations involving not only players but members of both coaching staffs. Several insiders insist the arguments reached a level that made continuing the contest impossible, though no one seems willing to go on record. Adding to the mystery is the league's unusually tight-lipped stance. Statements have been brief, cautious, and devoid of detail, prompting speculation that the situation may involve more than routine disciplinary concerns. Some believe the league is bracing for the fallout of video angles that have yet to surface publicly, footage rumored to show exchanges far more volatile than the broadcast cameras captured. Others insist the issue centers around procedural confusion among the officials, suggesting a breakdown in communication so severe that the integrity of the matchup could no longer be guaranteed. Meanwhile, the players have offered only cryptic remarks, hinting at things that got out of hand and decisions made above us. Fans are left to fill in the blanks, fueling theories ranging from dramatic confrontations to behind-the-scenes disagreements involving league representatives. Whatever the truth is, the Cowboys' Raiders annulment has already taken on a life of its own, a story growing stranger by the hour, as the league grapples with a moment that may linger far longer than the game that never officially happened. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay updated with exclusive news about our Las Vegas Raiders, be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that like button. We can't wait to hear your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next video.